just give it some time, because I make it clear in this book that we, as especially as pianists, have been biased or brainwashed, if you will, by post-Baroque tempos. So a lot of the very fast tempos we hear today are products of the 19th century. They're not, these are inventions of a later time. Hello and welcome. This is Corey from the BachScholar channel. As you saw on the thumbnail, whatever happened to Wim Winters? I remember a few years back I had some little quarrels with Wim Winters on YouTube, and actually I agree with a lot of what Wim Winters said. Actually, I think that Mr. Winters and I would probably agree on more than we disagree. So I have to give it to Wim that his double beat theory, that is the that many claim to be the flat earth theory of the classical music world, actually has a lot of truth and validity to it, but I think he takes it too far. So I would modify it. There are reasons for that. I'll make future videos on that. I've made videos already, but just in a very short nutshell, Wim Winters' double beat theory works out okay for anything that's in 2, like in 2/4 or 4/4, anything that does not have triplets, and anything that is not in compound meter, like 6/8. But once you start getting into 6/8s, 3/4s with like triplets mixed in, then the double beat metronome theory just falls apart, because it's by and large based on 2s. It's a binary system. It's a binary, I don't know, Melsel, the inventor of the metronome, I don't know, he didn't have instructions on how to do anything in 3s. Everything was in 2s. So that's the problem I have with the double beat system. With Wim Winters, I guess it's not his system. I guess it sort of, existed. There were people that theorized about it before him, but he's the main guy. Anyway, I wish him well in his retirement. Wim, if you're watching this video, I hope that you do well in your retirement. It looks like you're quitting now. You're quitting your YouTube channel. If it's not for any dire reasons, health reasons, or family reasons, or anything like that, then it must be because you're retiring, right? You amassed so much money that you can just retire. Well, you can just come down here to Florida, where I live, and retire here, and we can set up shop here and talk about tempos. So anyway, let me get to the point here. The point is, as controversial as Wim Winters is on YouTube with the double beat theory, I think I do believe it does have a lot of validity. I do believe that many early composers did use the metronome in a double beat fashion. Okay, I have to give it to Wim. I do believe that. But there are other things I definitely do not agree with. But another thing, entirely different from that, is something that I've been, toying with for a very, very long time now, probably even longer than Mr. Winters, and that is the tempo ordinario. And Wim has a nice video on the tempo ordinario, and he explains what that is. I agree with everything that he says, and so I'm in total agreement with the idea of the tempo ordinario. But I would, you can only go so far with it. You can't play everything in 4/4 time in the tempo ordinario. But what I wanted to do in this video is to just bring you into my world a little bit, into my new book, Tempo and Duration in the Music of Bach. And I'm going to actually, I have a proof copy which is different from the final copy. So I have lots of scribbles and notes in here, and the page numbers are different because I added new pages to the final copy. But anyway, so I can't give you page numbers here, but I'm turning to the part with the well-tempered clavier. Basically, in a nutshell, my theory is this: that Bach planned time durations for his music, such as 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes or whatever, or 4.5 minutes, whatever it should be. And but it's not so much the actual duration of time of just one movement. It's the relationship of it with another movement. So if you study the cantatas, that's why I really make it clear in this book that you really, to understand Bach's system and to understand what I'm trying to tell everyone, is you really have to understand this through the lens of a cantata composer and what the cantatas were. Once you understand that, you can, preludes and fugues are like pretty simple to figure out, because preludes and fugues are just two movements. But when you have cantatas, sometimes you have multiple relationships between movements, and it can get a little complex. But in a nutshell, Bach had only three main duration ratios that he worked with. And that was, and I'm going to apply this to a couple of preludes and fugues. So just hold on here. Also, by the way, this is my proof copy, and I formerly had slightly different tempos for the Prelude and Fugue in F sharp minor, which I'm going to talk about, which Wim makes reference to in his tempo ordinario video. So I just want to give you a heads up here that there's a correction that has to be done here. That's only if you happen to buy a PDF before I made this video. So if you bought a PDF before I made this video, you'll have to, well, you don't have to change it, you can just leave it, but just remember that the Prelude and Fugue in F sharp minor from book 1 is, I have since slightly changed those. And I'm going to explain why you change them and how you change them and everything like that. Okay, so 60 beats per minute is what Wim Winters says is the tempo ordinario, or about thereabouts. And here's the thing that's so beautiful about my theory in my book is that I don't just give approximates, I give exact numbers. So I hate to say it, Wim, but you're just off by 3. You're off by 3. Theoretically, and there's reasons for, I can't explain the reasons here in this video, but there are theoretical and mathematical reasons why this number must be 63, not 60. So I profess that Bach's tempo ordinario, the sort of ordinary kind of tempo for a 4/4 time piece, maybe with 16th notes in it, not fast and not slow, an ordinary time tempo ordinario was 63 beats per minute, 63. Now, we learn from the cantatas in this book that Bach had 3 duration ratios that he worked with, which I mentioned before. They were either 1-to-1, so he would either want a prelude and fugue to be equal in durations, take the same amount of time to play, or he wanted either the prelude or fugue to be 2 times longer than the other, to form a 1-to-2 ratio in either direction. Or the only other, couple other options occasionally, but by and large, about 95% of the time, the other option he used was 2-to-3. So let's say if one lasts 2 minutes, the other lasts 3 minutes. Or if one lasts, say, 1 minute and 20 seconds, the other lasts 2 minutes, because 1:20 and 2 are at a 2-to-3 ratio. So there were 1-to-1, 1 to 2, and 2 to 3. Notice that there's only 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3. Only 3 numbers. So Bach's main ratios that he used actually all throughout his church music, throughout his cantata music, was only those 3 ratios, with perhaps sometimes 1 to 3. He would use 1 to 3 sometimes, and not often, but it did happen. And occasionally 1 to 4, 1 to 4 maybe, but that's all. That's all. Really not much of that. So it was really 1 to 1, 1 to 2, and 2 to 3, using only 3 numbers. Now, why would he do that? Well, I make the bold claim that Bach did that for theological reasons, because 1, 2, and 3 symbolize the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. And Bach was a very devout Lutheran, and this was the main theological reason why he did this. So we know from the study of the cantatas that Bach's standard operating procedure was to plan the relationship between the time durations of his prelude and fugue. And he would do that because he knew his tempo beforehand. So he knew what his tempo ordinario was. He didn't say, oh, okay, it's about 60. No, he knew it was 63. He knew it was 63. And he planned his music based on that. So the tempo ordinario is 63, and then you have about maybe 11 or so other tempos sprinkled throughout the whole system. And this whole system is what I call the ideal tempo matrix, which is a bunch of tempos that are all interrelated and everything like that. And so 63, the tempo ordinario, is kind of smack dab right in the middle of all of those other kind of tempos, you know, the faster and slower tempos, and they all have interrelationships and everything. So the very interesting thing is solving preludes and fugues is like solving a puzzle. So let me take the first prelude and fugue here. I'm going to put the metronome on 63, and I'm going to play a little bit from the C major. Okay, that's what I claim Bach's tempo ordinario was. That's what Wim Winters, I'm sure, claims that Bach's tempo ordinario was, although he says it was 60. I say it was 63. No big deal there. I mean, we do agree on that pretty much. And then, so here's the deal. Now what Bach did, okay, was he has a fugue. So let's say the prelude, okay, how many measures does the prelude have? It has 35 measures. Okay, so 35 measures of 4/4 time, played at 63 beats per minute. I mean, if you can do a little math, you can figure out it comes to 2 minutes and 13 seconds. Basically 2 1/4 minutes, 2 1/4 minutes. You know, give or take like a second, or, you know, a second and a half. And then, so if he knew that, okay, if Bach composed the prelude and knew that he knew it has 35 measures, he knows it has this tempo, then he could easily calculate, okay, at this tempo with this many measures, it lasts, whatever, 2 1/4 minutes. Now what he did is this. Bach composed the fugue, and he told himself, okay, I want the fugue to be slower, in this case slower, sometimes they're faster, but he wanted a slower fugue. So everyone plays the fugue slower. So if you let's take a tempo like this for the fugue, okay? So let's say, I'm going to take this tempo here for the fugue. Let's see, listen. Perfect kind of tempo, nice flowing kind of andante speed, not too slow, not too fast. Do you know what that speed was? That was 48 beats per minute, 48. Now, big deal. Okay, big deal, 48. Okay, well, look at what's happening here. The prelude is at the tempo ordinario. It has 35 measures. It lasts 2¼ minutes at its speed. It has its speed. That's the one speed it has, the tempo ordinario in this case. The fugue is slower. So it goes a couple notches slower into the andante or maybe even quasi-adagio kind of range in there, largo maybe. So you have a moderato and a more of a largo. What is the result though? Okay, look at the fugue. The fugue has 27 measures of 4/4 time. Okay, assuming 48 beats per minute, do the math, it comes, what do you know? What do you get? 2¼ minutes. 2¼ minutes. So you have a prelude that lasts 2¼ minutes, or 2 minutes and 13 seconds, 0.33. And then you have a fugue that lasts 2:25. These are based on those idealistic speeds, 63 and 48. They are not ranges, they are actual speeds. So we're not saying it's about 60, we're saying it is 63. And so I am saying what my claim is this is not a coincidence. This is not a coincidence. See, when I first came up with this crazy theory, like over 30 years ago, people were calling me crazy. I came up with this theory over 30 years ago, and my fellow student friends, their grad school friends, just thought I was crazy. Oh, how is that ever possible? It's a coincidence. You need to check you need to check all of Bach's works to see if he does that. Well, you know what happened? 30 years went by, I did check it, and he did do it, and I did prove my theory. So it's just an amazing, amazing thing. So now let's go to the fugue in F sharp minor, or the prelude in F sharp minor, BWV 859, the one that I made reference to earlier. Now, Wim Winters talks a lot about this prelude in his video, and he plays some of it. It goes like this. Let's see. I'm going to put it on 63. Okay, 63. I'm going to play a little bit. It's the one. Like that. Oh, you can still have it memorized. So anyway, you have this nice sort of, I know it sounds slow. I know it's hard to get used to the slow tempo, but just give it some time, because I make it clear in this book that we especially as pianists, have been biased or brainwashed, if you will, by post-Baroque tempos. So a lot of the very fast tempos we hear today are products of the 19th century. They're not, these are inventions of a later time. And so if Wim and I are correct that there was such a thing as a tempo ordinario and Bach used it in his music, I mean, you can argue where it should be and where it shouldn't be, but it does exist in places, his tempo ordinario. And here's the thing about the relationships. You can figure out by process of elimination basically what Bach wanted in his plan, because the first prelude and fugue I just played, it just naturally, they naturally fall into the same time, 2¼ minutes. I mean, it's like you would have to play one really a lot faster for it to be a 1:2 ratio. That would sound terrible. 2:3 would just sound off as well either way. So you can narrow it down to like the first Prelude and Fugue in C major, really the only possibility, musically speaking, is a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you know that much, then you can sort of find by process of elimination both tempos. So like for a long time, I actually believed that first Prelude and Fugue, that both were just a tad faster, were at the next level. So for a very long time, I thought they were both exactly 2 minutes, but then I began to reassess that, and after analyzing more of Bach's complete works, I really came to the realization that the fugue of the C major really is best at 48. It's better than at 54 when I used to have it there. So, you know, many of these tempos have sort of come through time, through just sitting and molding for a while and getting sort of just desensitized from 19th century tempos. So anyway, you have this tempo ordinario, and really nice sort of intermediate level piano piece. This is not, when you understand it like this, you understand Bach was a pedagogue. This is not virtuoso music. I don't think this prelude is in the virtuoso style. I think it's more just a moderate kind of pace. This happens to be the 63 happens to be the Bach's standard tempo for a gavotte, for the dance a gavotte. So if you took sort of a gavotte tempo, like dum dum bum bum, like if you took like this, so that's 63. Okay, so 63, according to my research, was Bach's standard gavotte tempo, which also happens to be the tempo ordinario. So you can understand that this is sort of a little dance. You know, it's just a moderately paced little dance that happens to be in the same sort of tempo as a gavotte. It's not in all the brev like gavottes are, but same. Now, what happens when you play this at 63 beats per minute? Well, it has 24 measures in it. 24 measures of 4/4 time. You play it at 63, that lasts like 131, just a little bit over 1.5 minutes. So basically 1.5 minutes. Bach got as close to 1.5 minutes as he could. If he did 23 measures, it would be off. So yeah, he's 1 second over 1.5 minutes. 1.5. Now, very common what Bach did, like he did in the first Prelude and Fugue. You notice how he was at a tempo ordinario and then the fugue was slower, a little slower. So he went from 63 to 48, like maybe, I don't know, 20% slower, something like that. So he very often would do things like that. He'd just go a little slower or a little faster for the Prelude or Fugue, and everything would equal out to whatever duration ratio he was shooting for. So in the F sharp minor one, assuming 1.5 minutes for the Prelude, then let's look at the Fugue. The Fugue is a very beautiful, slower kind of piece in a very kind of unusual meter, 6/4, and it happens to be in the meter of a courant. Also, the meter of Bach also used this meter for lures, sometimes called lures, but it doesn't have that little thing over the E. 3, 1, Now, let's see what that was. Let's see what that was. Oh, that was a nice tempo, wasn't that? It just floats along. It's not too slow, not too fast. Let's see what that is. Ah, 84. Listen. That's a nice speed for that. And you know, usually it's played around there, but very often it's played even slower than that. Okay, so that even is sometimes fast. That would probably be considered fast for like someone like Richter, who plays everything really slow. I don't know, not crazy about his preludes and fugues in general, but I don't know. I'm sorry I said that, if you're a Richter fan. Anyway, this tempo of 84, well, let's do the math. Let's see what happens when this is done a little faster than the prelude. So we have a prelude that goes like we're assuming 63, the tempo ordinario. At that speed, it lasts a minute and a half. Now, the fugue has 40 measures of 6/4. 40 measures of 6/4. Assuming 84 is we're going to play it at, that lasts 2 minutes and 51 seconds. 2:51. Okay. So, it tells us that Look, there's trends. See, you can see what Bach's plans were by they followed trends. Trends, trends. They follow trends. They either approach a 1-to-1 ratio, they approach a 1-to-2 ratio, or they approach a 2-to-3 ratio. Which one is this? It's 1-to-2. Because the prelude at its tempo lasts a minute and a half. What's twice a minute and a half? Twice a minute and a half is 3 minutes. 2:51. Okay, 2:51. That's just 2 measures short of 3 minutes. So you can see that had Bach given it 2 more measures, instead of 40 measures, had he had 42 measures, played at that same speed, it would last 3 minutes. So you see 1.5 minutes and 3 minutes is 1-to-2 ratio. Now, how do we know it's not 1-to-1 or 2-to-3? Well, it's easy to tell because you would totally kill either one of these by trying to make them equal. So this particular prelude and fugue cannot be equal. They cannot be 1-to-1 because you would have to make the prelude way too slow. They can't. 2-to-3 doesn't really work very well. I mean, you can sort of make it 2-to-3, but one is just too slow and one is too fast. It just doesn't really make any musical sense. The only one that really makes any musical sense in this particular case is 1-to-2. See, each prelude and fugue follows a different plan. They're not all 1-to-2 or all 1-to-1 or all 2-to-3. You have to look at it like a detective. Look at it like a detective and figure out, well, if this is that, if the prelude has this tempo and the fugue has this tempo, it creates this ratio, and if they're really good tempos in themselves, then that's what Bach planned, because Bach first chose his tempo and then he chose his measures based on that. So according to my theory, Bach knew before he composed the F-sharp minor fugue, he knew in his head he was aiming for 42 measures. That was his goal, that was his ideal. He didn't quite reach it though. He reached 40, which was pretty good, but his average is usually better than that. he usually gets, that's like a 4-point-something% average, which is, you know, kind of low for Bach. But anyway, considering that he had, you know, 48 preludes and fugues to deal with, that's pretty good. I mean, just 2 measures off from his ideal. So this is the way that Bach worked. See, he had one of 3 ratios that he desired, or sometimes one, you know, maybe another one mixed in, but it was basically 1-to-1, 1-to-2, and 2-to-3 ratios. And there is such a thing as tempo ordinario, and it was 63 beats per minute, according to my research. So I do agree with Mr. Winters on that aspect, although his tempo ordinario is about 3 below that at 60. Anyway, thanks for joining me. I'm going to do more on this in coming videos, because I think this is very important for us to know that how Bach planned his music. He planned it by choosing his tempos and meters first, and then choosing his duration ratio between the 2 pieces, between the prelude and fugue, and then he would shoot for an ideal number of measures to attain to get that ratio, you know, to make it, put it in full effect, so to speak. So anyway, I hope this video wasn't too long. I'll see you in the next video.